Okay, so we had an opportunity to kind of talk about your background. What caught your attention about the idea of this?
Sorry, my voice is really Hello. Thank you. So as I mentioned, I had worked in a business school setting. I was a researcher there, primarily doing my postdoc. And then I managed a lab, behavioral lab there. I kept hearing a lot about case studies and professor actually publishing them in the Harvard, what
Okay,
is it called? The Harvard Business.
well, how business press is
Yeah,
kind of like
exactly.
the holding body that controls like this $500 million enterprise. It's a
Yes,
big operation.
it is. It's a big, yeah. And I was just curious about using it in the classroom because I feel it's a great way of kind of applying the major principles.
Yeah.
But then I've never used it. So I'm coming out of a lot of curiosity about it to
Okay.
know even the basics. So I'm quite
Okay.
naive about it. I know what it is theoretically.
Yeah.
Yeah. But not in
And you're a
practice.
step ahead of a lot of people that aren't in a business school or a law school setting. That's two areas. How about you?
Yeah, and I've observed some classes that have used this methodology of teaching in
Okay.
the business school, particularly, and I haven't used in my classes,
Okay.
which is interesting. I just use other methods of teaching. I was optimistic that more business faculty were going to come because I think that one of the things that I heard is like, yeah, there's nothing about case study sessions on case study classes, and then like this semester was like there is a session on case study practices. But yeah.
Well, and I may have got, when you sent out the notice, there were like the one for yesterday's session and the one for today.
Yeah.
And I'm not so sure that if a lot of people just kind of swipe past and didn't quite.
Maybe I think there's some people who just don't look at the CT emails,
Yeah,
period.
yeah.
So it's just challenging. But it is interesting how this methodology is very common into the business school.
Oh, yeah.
It's and not so much in other disciplines, but I feel like it could be applicable to absolutely any discipline because it's about, just using, oftentimes it's a real world scenario. So like you want to do application for real world situations. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, well, let's start then. Talk a little bit about assessment options, case study, AI case writing, Q&A, and ask questions whenever you want.
Sure. Excellent.
We have a lot of degrees of freedom here. So when I think of assessment options, I think of the usual suspects, the multiple choice, true, false.
Yeah.
Fill in the blank, matching roulette, 10 items on this side, 10 items on that side, and draw little lines. Short answer responds. And then at the other end of the spectrum, the War and Peace novelette, novella, where professor says, tell me about your theory of human motivation, and you write for 5 hours or whatever, kind of like what you did for comps, maybe for written comps. Yeah. Now, in my world, I do not use those at all on midterm or final exams. I will acknowledge that if I want to assess students and encourage them to get their reading done each week, and I'm still a big fan that people should read, content. That it's like executive MBAs. There's a quiz before the start of every class.
Mm-hmm.
First 6 minutes of class, open up your notebooks, pull up Canvas, half a dozen quiz questions. They're very carefully written, so they're big picture, and they're also open note. But if they're reading 80 pages, they're not going to be able to, in 6 minutes, cover that if they haven't read it beforehand. So I do use that. This stuff I don't use at all, because there may be a way to do this on Canvas. I haven't explored that, and then my classes are typically 40 to 50 students, and the idea of grading 50 War and Peace novels, particularly when people ramble, when you just give them this open-ended question, tell me about your philosophy of motivation, it can go off, the railroad tracks really badly. So case study. It's a scenario. It's a realistic, sometimes real situation, and you can apply theories and concepts, practice decision making, develop problem solving. I'm going to do a laser focus today on application of theories and concepts. And so in a class, I could use it for decision making, like, okay, which path would you go? I could do it for problem solving. We do that a lot in areas like accounting, where it's like, okay, your company's trying to figure out why it's losing money. Let's do a cost analysis and marginal revenue and stuff like that, marginal cost. But I simply want to look at, for a situation, how would you apply a theory to that situation? And I like to use this particular methodology for course exams. So instead of multiple choice, instead of the true false, all that stuff, none of that at all. It's 100% case based for the exams. Now I'm going to show you an example of this. So this will be very familiar to both of you because of your backgrounds. Let's say I do a lecture on self-efficacy development. Okay, so the students have read a chapter on it. We've had discussion in class. We do some analysis of some scenarios, some video clips, etc. So they're well grounded in the concept. And one of the areas that I focus on is self-efficacy development. So I use the model where you got the mastery experience, and then the vicarious experience of seeing others, the persuasion factor of feedback, both for progress and motivation, and then somatic and emotional state. So pretty standard in the self-efficacy domain. So students have that knowledge. For an exam, what I'll do is they'll get a 2-page case study that describes a situation with an individual having, say, low or high self-efficacy. And what they'll be asked on the exam, in this case, I'm going to use low self-efficacy in the case. And so the exam question at the end of the case, so they have a 2-page case, this will be at the end of it. And it goes, for this case study, which theory from our course best explains how and why Carol, who was the manager in this situation, has undermined Robin's confidence, motivation, and performance? Now, in this situation, I'm not mentioning the word self-efficacy. Okay, what I want them to do is develop the answer by naming the strongest theory choice, then explicitly connecting each theory part to the case data. So this course, we've studied justice theories, we've studied culture, we've studied career development. We've covered a lot of topics. So they've got this menu of theories, and for this situation, what's the problem? Is it a justice issue? Is it a pay fairness issue? No. It's totally going to be this manager being very detrimental in terms of how she treats this other person in the situation. So, and in this example, I say 6 points exam credit. I tell them a half-page max, single space. So typical exam is going to be half a dozen cases, about 1.5 pages to 2 pages each. And on each of them, they have to figure out which theory is the strongest fit, and then take the case data and then apply it in the situation. Okay. Now, here's an example of an answer. This is a Cliff Note version of it. Self-efficacy is the strongest theory to explain how Robin's management undermines Carol's confidence, ability, development, motivation. Mastery is low because of this case data. Vicarious is low because of this case data. Feedback and persuasion is problematic because of this case data. Emotional, somatic because of this. Their answer would be half a page with a little more data, but this is like the big picture of what the answer would be. Now, what's happening here? Well, first of all, it's an open note exam. And so that reduces the propensity to cheat because people tend to focus on their own notes rather than what's going on next to it. So I've only had one with executive MBAs, for example, in 17 years, I've only had one cheating case. I was a student who, on a take-home exam, decided to use ChatGPT. It was a mess. Her answer, it was just, I had one case where I think the answer actually was self-efficacy, and she used some developmental psychology theory from a Russian psychologist from 100 years ago that I didn't even know about because it's not even used anymore. It's so outdated. Yeah. It was just bizarre. But for the most part, people are focusing on their own, notes in like the reading and stuff like that. So that helps a lot. Second, the students have to understand the theories well enough to recognize what would work in this situation. For this toolkit of theories I've got, which is the most appropriate tool that they have. Third, goes way beyond memorization, where it's actually be able to recognize and then apply in the situation, kind of connecting the dots. And the assessment is streamlined because instead of having to follow a bunch of different paths with an open-ended essay question, it's a very focused answer. You either have connected mastery experience to the data or not. You've either connected by curious or not. So what you saw earlier was basically the answer key. And the grading on this is far smoother. It's a wonderful experience when you're going through. They go, yep, they got that, they got that, they got that, they got that. Okay, questions on that?
Do you usually give the same case for all the students then for the exam? Or have you thought about having similar cases, but like different?
I'm not quite sure how that works.
For instance, in this scenario, you're giving the story about that manager with the woman and how treated her poorly.
Okay.
Have you thought about doing, in addition to that scenario, having other scenarios that are similar, but they're just slightly different? So you have multiple groups of things within the same class for the same exam, and you have maybe 4 different cases.
Okay. No, why do that?
Minimize cheating during the exam or something, because then they're having to deal with different scenarios.
I have not.
So maybe it'll be a scenario that's similar, but just some of the details might be a little different.
Well, and now that's going to be very feasible, though.
Yeah.
As I'll show you in a little bit, or a little bit later on. At this point, so as far as I know, and again, this is like my 17th or 18th year of teaching executive MBAs, which has been my main bread and butter for teaching. I've only detected one cheating case in 18 years.
Yeah.
Now, is there some I didn't detect? Maybe, but I'm not aware of it, And I find that there's 2 ways to detect cheating. One is when a student does what she did on this exam last year, where she feeds it to AI, and AI puts out gibberish.
Yeah.
And she puts the gibberish down. And so what I did when I got her exam and I'm reading it, I'm like, what the hell is this? I simply took my exam, submitted it to ChatGPT for each of the questions where she had these bizarre answers, and it would give me my answer first. Then I would say, ChatGPT, give me an additional theory that maybe isn't quite as good. And then ChatGPT, give me one more. And in every case, it was the second or third choice that the student did. Now, the second thing is that when I find that students cheat, they copy not only the correct information, but the incorrect information. So I have had some cases in the part-time MBA program, which I also teach in the spring semester. And almost on an annual basis, I'll have 2 exams, and I'll be reading a pile of like 100 exams. And I've got one exam where I'm reading it and I'm like, that's kind of bizarre, but I'll just like strange errors and misuse of the theory, etc. Well, then about 20 exams later, I'm like, wow, that's weird. I think I've seen that before. Because the error sticks out.
Yeah.
And so I'll go back and I'm like, oh my gosh, same errors on that answer, same errors on that answer. Bingo. So then I send the student, one of the students an email. Don't send it to both. I said to one of them, and I go, I've noticed a problem with your exam. Uh, Please explain to me why your answer is an exact replica of another student's exam. You have the choice that we either resolve this and I do this to your grade, or we send it to the honor council if you don't acknowledge.
Yeah.
And I only send that email if it's so clear, that it's a handshake case. And every time, eventually, the students will say, "Yes, I'm sorry." So at this point, I haven't had
Yeah.
to do it. And again, if students have their own notes,
Yep.
but it is going to be more challenging with the rise of AI and with us doing more online exams with the executive MBA program. That's going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I'll be retired eventually. So now, for 2 decades, the big challenge on using this methodology was finding the cases. And you could find some Harvard cases, but like what I initially started doing is I would use a Harvard case that was like maybe 10 pages long, and I would find about half a dozen places in the case where I could use this theory here, etc. But sometimes it was tough to find a case. So I have a background in journalism, so I would be writing cases, but writing every case from scratch, that's a nightmare. And so I was given like a week of my life twice a year to write all these cases, and if I had a final exam, then another week of my life, and so it was getting real painful. Well, then in 2023, ChatGPT comes along, and I'd heard about artificial intelligence back in the 80s with a company that I worked with in Dallas or in Kansas City, but had never really followed up on it. And so when this came out and I started seeing like, I wonder if I tried to write something.
I mean, that's the perfect use for it, right? Like that's what we want. Just because it's like that's how it helps in the teaching, right?
Yeah,
it's creating these scenarios because you can tweak it. Yeah.
And so in February of 2023, almost 2 years ago, I did my first exam where I had 2 of the cases I wrote with ChatGPT.
Yeah,
I loved it. Now I
almost
learned
like the Harvard ones. You have to pay a ton of money.
Oh yeah, that's
right. Like
and
those are those real cases, or those were just cases some are real?
They're both. So if you look at the when I gave the definition of a case study, I said that could be real or realistic.
Yeah,
and
like
so
inspired by something.
Yes, exactly. So you have some cases that are absolute. Here are the people, here are their names, here's the company, everything's transparent. You have some other cases, like there's a case that I teach on Michelin tires, where it's an executive from France, locates in the US to the headquarters in South Carolina, and just bombs it. Because he's considered to be this arrogant French European guy. And so it's a cross-culture case in terms of, why is his style grading his Southern colleagues so much? And in that case, the case writer was asked by Michelin to not reveal his name or to reveal his exact position, because Michelin had multiple divisions. Now, the cool thing was I talked with the case writer. She's in INSEAD in France. And I said, Aaron, would it be okay if, do you know his name? And would it be okay to use it? And I said, sure. I was actually his coach when this thing happened. So that's how she knew about it. And second, his daughter's at the London Business School, and he was a guest speaker there. And but here was the weird thing, that I had a student in the class, doctor at Baylor. And at the end of the case, I put a picture of the guy up, and the student goes, that's him. The student had met him at a resort in Europe that summer when he was on vacation.
That's awesome. Small world.
Well, and the good news was I had all my details right. I did my background and everything. He goes, imagine if I said ABC and the student in class, well, I met that guy about 4 weeks ago, in France at a resort, and that isn't what he told me, so it sounds helpful. So if we think about our ChatGPT interface here. I'm using SMU's Coalition one. Do you have access to that yet? Oh, okay, yeah, okay. And the other would be to have like the $20 account. Yeah, so I started with the $20 account. Yeah.
So SMU, it's not for everybody. So it's just a select group of faculty that are part of this coalition of the willing that are utilizing the tool and then sharing with others how they're utilizing the tool. So there's like a Microsoft Teams group that there's conversations about it. So yeah.
And this version of it, what I really like about it is that what you put in there doesn't become part of the larger database.
Yeah, it's not even.
And so it's discrete to me. And so if I write a case, that case isn't out there, in the Ethernet, and that's good. The other is that it allows you to work here. So right below that, where it says ChatGPT 5.1 thinking, there's like 4 or 5 modes that ChatGPT. There's like the quick modes, and then there's the thinking mode, which goes deeper in. And then there's the professional mode. I don't think the paid subscription, the $20 one, I don't think has the professional. But this one has the professional. You only get limited use to it. So like I was using it to work on some cases. So it was last spring. No, it was last spring. In the summer, I was writing a case. And about halfway through, I get this message: your time is up. You have no more access to it.
I got one of those too. Like you have to wait until like 4:30 p.m. to continue your search. It's like, oh, great.
Yeah, and it's like contact your administrator.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was painful. But the thinking takes longer. But I'm okay with that. To go that. How we at time wise?
I think we're good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just checking.
So I use that. One of the things that there was just an article that was released by Harvard Business Review this past month that talks about how that when you do these chats, how you can create folders, say like that one there, the screenshot that I had from yesterday, and that when I go back to that folder there, that it has kind of this memory now of what my style is and what I'm talking about, etc. So when I want to revise this case for, say, a future exam, I can go back to that folder.
Yeah.
And it's already got this database. Now, having said that, I was working on a book chapter this fall, and it was just this big, hairy mess. And I said, check this for references, do this, do that. And it eventually started getting bogged down. And so occasionally you may have to say, there's just too much junk in here. I got to start fresh, but so far, except for that experience, I've been in pretty.
Sometimes it's helpful that you can tell the AI systems, like, I want to start a new chat. Can you create a prompt with all the main information that I have already given you in this chat that I can give to the other? And it gives you the prompt that will help you kind of start.
Okay, I haven't tried that yet. Okay.
Yeah. So you can ask it to give you prompts to help you with stuff. So
yeah. Okay. So when I look here now in this entry box here, we got okay. Yeah, so the entry box here, there's 2 options here, and I'll mention this again a little bit later, I think, that you've got the option to enter the text, or if you have the SMU Teams version of it, or you have a page description of it, you can upload the document. So what you have here, I could actually upload those instructions. Those are basically the instructions I used for the case today, and it would go all the way to where that line is. This part didn't go into the case, but this part up here went to it. Okay, so this is where your handout starts then. So how I start writing a case is an example here is a case study on low self-efficacy. So the first thing I do is I give it a task introduction. We're going to write this organizational behavior case study, illustrate self-efficacy development for employees in a work setting. This study, employees have been told to start using artificial intelligence platforms such as ChatGPT at work. employees' attempts at using AI is not going well because of the manager undermining the employee's self-efficacy about his AI ability. And there's some other things that, like some people will say, well, you got to tell it, what grade level you're at, whether it's, undergrad or graduate, is it intro or advanced? I do none of that at all. I haven't found that helpful, and I actually find that it adds complexity and takes it off in directions I don't necessarily want it to go. So that's my start. Then the next thing I do is give it the theory that I want. Now, this one, there's two ways to do this. One would be is that I could upload, say, a book chapter on self-efficacy and say, here's this book chapter on, take the attached book chapter on self-efficacy and use that for the theory development. Okay. What I prefer to do is simply take from my lecture notes in class and simply do a summary of like in this case, the 4 factors of self-efficacy development. I like this better because AI has this tendency to find what it finds, which may or may not be aligned with the way I presented it in class. So if it writes the case based on something that it found over here versus the way that I presented it in class, I got a mess, as a result. And it's not fair to students as a result. But that's pretty easy to do. Just take my lecture notes, copy it down, and then I give it the structure. And this is the part where I had to learn how to do this. My initial attempts at AI in writing cases, I would have to do repeat iterations because I didn't like this, I didn't like this. And so what I found was start with the case actors and roles. So a new employee's been instructed to start using AI for a new and important work project, blah, blah, blah. And then introduction. Please start the case with some opening background about the company, the New York project, the employee and manager. This should be about 100 words in length. I found that's really important to specify what you want the intro to be rather than let it going off on its own somewhere. Then the main text. For each self-efficacy development factor, please write about 150 words to explain why self-efficacy about successful AI use is low due to the unhelpful behaviors by the manager. Now, there's 2 ways to do the main text. One is to say, let's take each self-efficacy development factor and develop a paragraph around just it. So do the first paragraph on mastery, then do a paragraph on vicarious, then on feedback, etc. And what I like about that is that when the students are doing the exam, they're able to say, okay, this looks like all of the stuff on mastery. Then they go to the next paragraph. This looks like the feedback paragraph, etc. The other way you could do it, if I had a more advanced class, would be not to specify that and to have little random pieces about mastery here in the case and here in the case and here in the case, etc. Makes it tougher to grade. And so
makes it tougher to grade, but also it'll be interesting to see how the students would argument, like each of the sections, and if it could be multiple things, if it's a little more blurred lines.
Yeah.
So it's like about the argumentation and making the case for why it could be certain things. That could be an interesting thing. If you have a smaller number of students in your class and you could spend the time.
Yeah. If I had I always like to use the thing about enrollments at SMU. In Dedman College, you have classes that they cap it at 20. Yep. At Cox, we cancel if it's not 20. It's 2 very different models in terms of enrollment. And so when you've got 40, 50, then different gig. So in this case, it's going to do 600 words to cover those 4, and then end with a short conclusion of 150 words that brings the situation to a natural stopping point. So now I've got basically a case that's going to be about 700 words. There are some cases, let's say I'm using John Cotter's change model that has 8 steps. But that case might have to be 2,000 words rather than 700 words. So I think about what's appropriate that I can get enough detail in there about self-efficacy that would work for the case. Okay, what's missing here at this point?
Let's see. I mean, maybe a scenario or something, like if you want to keep an industry, a specific industry or something.
Okay, that could be a possibility.
You know,
what else?
I don't know. Maybe a rubric.
Pardon
me? A rubric to assess it.
Okay, cool. And that we'll talk about a little bit later.
Okay. Sorry.
But here's what's missing: the guardrails.
oh.
What happened early on was that I would set the case up just like I did, and it would give me all this junk I didn't want. Like it would talk about self-efficacy right in the case.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want you to talk about self-efficacy or even use the word self-efficacy because I want people to be able to recognize this is a self-efficacy case. It would give me recommendations about what the manager did wrong and why she should be fired or something. And I was like, no, don't put all that junk in there at all. I want to get right to the case. So I found out that one, I need to tell what time period it is. Is this like a week, a year, or whatever? Second, the voice. Do I want to be the third person of how like an objective observer? Or do I want to be first person from the role of the victim in the situation or from the role of the manager type thing? Do I want it present tense, past tense? And that solves a lot of problems, and that's consistency.
So is that something that you usually see, like the third person narrator when written in past tense, that you see that in a case, like a normal? Like
you will see both. Okay. So I have like one case that I use, Helen Ramsey case, where it primarily is a series of quotes from the two parties. So the manager's talking about what a bad employee he's got, the employee's talking about what a bad manager he's got, and they're basically talking about how they're driving each other crazy. So it's this discussion that goes on. There's some cases that I've written where it's simply one person's perspective. Here's how this person treated me so well and why I'm so successful. Other cases where it's this third party,
okay,
and saying they did this, etc. So there's options here.
Okay.
I'm simply making, for this case, that's the choice I want to make here then slightly the theory. So I want it to be clear that someone could tell this is a self-efficacy issue here, but I don't want them to use the word self-efficacy, etc.
Don't give the answers.
Yeah, exactly. Don't give the answers. Yeah, and so that has been really helpful because initially it was giving the answers.
Yeah.
And then don't do any questions. I'll write the question. Don't give instructions. Don't do textbook explanations about what self-efficacy is. Don't do any commentary about what the actor should have done differently. That's been remarkably helpful because early on when I was doing this, it was giving me all that junk, which then I had to clean the case up, And one last addition. I initially would do a question like, before you start writing the case, please ask me any questions about the information you need to write the case. ChatGPT went crazy. It said, I can't comply to what you asked. This doesn't work. And then it would cycle for about 10 seconds. I can't do this. Eventually it would do it.
Overwhelmed.
Yeah, it was really interesting, how it was rebelling basically, like Hal on 2001: A Space Odyssey. And so I then asked it, I said, okay, so what would be a better way to ask you if there are any questions before you start? Please provide the exact phrase you would like to use. And it gave me a response. Here's the exact response. Here's a cleaner version you can copy and reuse. Yeah, that's amazing. Just how you could ask it a question like that about, well, what would you prefer?
Yeah.
What works better for you? And in putting this together, I actually did one version of this where I initially was going to try to put together a master template of all the steps you could make.
Uh-huh.
And I gave it to ChatGPT, and it wasn't quite working very well. So I said, well, how would you want me to do this better? And it gave me a new template.
Uh-huh.
It reorganized it and said I would work with this better. So I find
What is the lesson about just in human interactions? Because I'm pretty sure that for any other human, if you said that to somebody, it's how do you prefer that I communicate with you so that you're better? Like to anybody, that would be a better way to communicate.
now, given our backgrounds, our joint backgrounds in psychology, I'm not recommending we go to you have this replace counseling.
Yes.
I've got a friend that I've known since fifth grade in grade school back in the Midwest, whose daughter is a clinical psychologist. And right now she's really freaked out about people replacing trained, experienced psychologists with ChatGPT.
Oh yeah.
She's real, and you've seen some of the news stories about people hanging themselves. And
Oh yeah.
getting
Like
help on
teenager
suicide, right? You know,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's strange.
Scary.
So that's what I use now at the end. Okay, so at this point, we're going to actually run this. And my initial plan was to do it as a document upload, but I couldn't get my version in. And so we have pulled up this version, and we're going to do a test to see if this works. Actually, I don't need to do that because it's here. Okay, so this is what you have, except I got to cut this part off. Okay, so we'll enter as everything above this point here. Okay. And notice I've got this new version of it now. Please, before you begin, please ask. I'm also very polite. I say please. I say
Oh yeah, I'm very polite to it too. You never know when they're gonna turn. I was like, "Hi, good morning. How are you doing?" Like I also asked them to provide me with a joke. Like usually,
really,
I have a chat that is for message improvement, like for grammar and stuff. So I always say, the tone that I would like for it to improve on, and there's something like about like always end like with a tiny little joke or something to make me smile.
Okay, so I've entered the text.
Excellent. Excellent. So that's the information about the company.
Now, if I had already worked on this, it wouldn't have those questions.
Yeah.
But given that this is a green field here, it's okay. So let's go technology. And please. Professional shifting roles. Actually, mid-career is okay.
Well, that's interesting. Should the managers undermining behavior be mild and subtle or overt and discouraging?
I'm going to use the overt.
Yeah. But also think about the level of the students, right? If it is mild and subtle, it will be perhaps more challenging for the students to determine. So if it's a case that they're going to be using in class and they might have a little more time than an exam, then you can do the mild and subtle. Like if you're going to do group work, mild and subtle, there's more time in class, maybe over multiple classes, you can do that. But if it's an exam, you have limited time.
Bingo.
Then averting this, more clearly.
And it's easier to grade.
Yes, easier to grade. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, if I were in a class, think about the concept of discriminatory behavior, and you could have behaviors that are very overt.
Yeah.
But one of the problems you have is microaggressions.
Yeah.
That are more subtle. And so in a classroom discussion, it would probably make more sense to
the subtle. Yeah, you can do the subtle
also then, and realize that it's just not the over. Although now in the public discourse. Even the overt is.
Or even like if you're gonna go through a case together, like as the instructor and demonstrating, you perhaps could demonstrate the mild and subtle as the example, and then create one that is more overt and for the students to solve by themselves.
Okay, so should let's go
I
specific.
think even while teaching, we do that.
Yeah.
When I give examples, I have
And
the obvious, and then slowly becomes a subtle,
Yeah.
and then obvious, and the exam could have either.
Yeah.
okay, so I've gone technology, mid-career, abort behavior, specific, and realistic.
Ooh, yes, start. Nice.
We got Daniel and Carla. We got
Wonderful.
factor one. Now, what I'll go then is go back into this. I'll remove factor one
Yeah.
and I'll give it some fun little quote like something like AI is hell. And then I'll go down here for factor two and I'm like, why are my neighbors doing so much better? And I'll go to factor three here. Why I'm always told I'm an idiot. I'm making these up, but it's kind of like I want them to realize, okay, this is a new group of text.
Yeah.
And so analyze this and then go down here. And the last one, then a little summary in the end of the month. Then you have made a little progress in the platform, blah, blah, blah. That is ready for an exam.
That's great.
No, it's phenomenal. Now,
You know what would be funny too if instead of Dana and Carla, you put like the names of students in the class too. You know, that'd be funny.
so a confession. What I do on cases to help me remember who people are is I use people from my childhood, people that I went to college with,
Yeah.
and I use people who are memorable in my life, both for good and bad reasons.
Yeah.
And so it's not unusual that if I have a villain in the case, that the villain's name is either Newt, Harry, or Al.
Uh-huh.
In my life, I've had three really bad bosses.
Uh-huh.
One in my 20s, one in my 30s, or two in my 30s. And so one of them was Newt Ward.
Uh-huh.
And so he's in cases a lot. In other words, Harry Dennis, he's in cases a lot. They're all dead. And the other was Asshole Al, who is still alive somewhere down in South Carolina. And he's big of asshole as ever. And then people that I
memorialize the case studies.
People I remember fondly, like Barbara Higdon, a phenomenal dean that I had back in my coaching days. And so she's always a hero, So I do that. But student names in class, there I'm concerned about maybe I could embarrass someone. Yeah. And so I'm a little more circumspect about that because there's like I had a student 2 years ago, he graduated now, but boy, it was a pain in the ass. And it would have been tempted to put that pain in the ass student's name in a case in the role of acting like an idiot,
Yeah.
But think about,
Yeah.
just don't go there. So what I would then do is ask it. I don't think on the free version I can ask it to do a Word document, but I'll ask it to give me a word. Let's try it. And I think it's going to reject me.
Thank you.
Oh, so yeah. So if I were at home, it would give me one.
Yeah.
Here it's not. Okay. It basically wants me to log in and blah, blah, blah. We're not going to get that. Now, here's where the fun things start. Let's say I want to reuse this case a few years later. because typically I'll take a case and I'll recycle it, but I know there are fraternity files and sorority files on campus. And so if I reuse a case, I will change it and I'll change the names, I'll change the industry. Instead of low self-efficacy, I'll make it high self-efficacy. So let's see in the free version if I can do this.
The engaging in positive behavior.
Yes, it's manage engaging in. Yeah, thank you. In, oops. Oh, I'll get the number locked on. It would help. In positive behaviors that promote high self-efficacy. Okay, let's give it a shot. Okay, so see, it's right enough. Yeah, that's where. Well, actually, I'm okay. It'll let me do it. Okay. Okay, revise for high. Okay, so over a period of month, platform, short daily sessions where she explored the platform, encouraged him to try small tasks, in terms of deliberate practice, etc. Here's midpoint connecting with Daniel individuals whose tasks resembled his, so the vicarious experience, gave consistent, constructive feedback. It's amazing.
Yeah.
At the end of the month, Daniel had integrated the AI platform in his continuous workflow. Now I could do the same thing and say change the names. I could change the countries.
Yeah.
Like I've got this case I mentioned about the executive from Michelin. So in the case, it's about the culture conflict of this Michelin executive who has this French background, and then the Americans with their cultural norms. I revised it the next year to have a Canadian employee who's in Russia and having this background. Then I revised it to change it to, let's see, a German who was in Thailand. And then this year, I think I went with Brazil and with Saudi Arabia or something like that, Yeah. And so I simply could take the case and go take Aaron Meyer's four factors for cross-cultural differences, and I'll have to research the countries beforehand to make sure that Brazil and Saudi Arabia are different on the four factors, and or that Canada and Russia are different on the four factors. So I actually would do an interview with ChatGPT beforehand. And I go, here are the four factors from Aaron Meyer. Find me two countries that are the opposite on each of these.
Yeah.
And sure enough, it comes up with two countries.
Yeah.
And then from there, yes.
So question, so when you ask them, find me a country with the opposite one, do you also ask for academic reference for that? Because sometimes I've used ChatGPT quite a lot. And I ask them, give me academic reference for this. And then I go and check the academic reference. Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's not. It gives fake academic references at times. Journal names are authentic, but no such article has been published there. Yeah. So because my work is very much like everything, I have to give an academic reference. Yeah. I'm talking about, does it apply to your context as well? I'm just curious about that.
Does. It does. So it's a complex question with a lot of pieces, but that's good. So the first part of it is that part of why I ask students to not use ChatGPT for the class is because you've got to have the expertise in the first place to evaluate the outcome. And so what I will do is that after it identifies these two countries, I'll then do a deep dive and say, okay, is Brazil really different on these four factors And is Saudi Arabia really different on these 4 factors? So I could go like to Erin Meyer's database. She has a database now of all the countries that she's summarized. And for students, they quite often will simply take what it gives at face value. But if I can take my expertise to the situation then and say, well, let's go and actually go to some databases and look at, are these countries really different the way that they say? That helps on that. Second, so in this, when I do these cases, I put citations if it's a real event. So there's a case, for example, the Dean of Asian Studies at, oh no, I'll give you a better one. That one's a grim one. She committed suicide. But there's this machine that produces this really high-pitched noise that only young people can hear. When you get over 30, we start losing certain frequencies in our hearing. And it's been designed to put in spots where teenagers congregate and hang around, but you don't want them hanging around. You know, so like a Greyhound bus station or a shopping mall or something like that. And so you've heard of these before. Okay. So they turn these things on at night at like at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. And it's like Teen Be Gone is like the name of it. So I've heard about this. I read an article about it. Like, wow, that'd be a really neat case study for using optic conditioning, you know, which I teach in class. And so I found an example of it in England and wrote the case up. And it was a really fun case, very short case, like only about half a page or so. And students had to do ABC, antecedent behavior, and consequence analysis of it. So I decided to reuse the case, but a couple of years later, but I thought, okay, I need to put it in another country. And so I moved it to Japan. And I said, okay, so ChatGPT, I want to take this case and move it in Japan and find the evidence of this happening in Japan. So I wrote this nice little case and it gave me a couple of references at the end. Neither reference seemed familiar. And I go, ChatGPT, could you give me the source of those 2 references? And it replies back, I'm sorry, but I made them up. And so, yeah. So I give it credit for that, you know, but it was really pretty, you know, interesting, you know. And so I went back and said, okay, find me a real reference. And then it found me what it said was a real reference. And I pulled that reference up to verify. And so I'm really big on that verification process. Yeah, I would not follow it blind. Now, again, like the self-efficacy example here, I know self-efficacy so, you know, as you would, you know, so inside out, you know, I can tell instantly if it's off. But if it's a real world case, then I got to do my detective work above and beyond ChatGPT. Or a lot of times I'll see a reference link and I'll hit the reference link to make sure that it's a valid thing there then. So very important, yeah, on that. So the cool thing is, as long as I have it in that folder, you know, and it's a model that I have the folders, I can change it from positive to low. I did that with a case on expectancy theory this year, where the initial case, it was very low. Then I did a new version of the case this year, where it was very high, you know, and I can change the genders, I can change the industry, I can change the countries, you know, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, and it just goes in there and does it. Yeah.
Great use for ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Well, it's
phenomenal. Okay, so let me go back to.
We are a little past.
Okay, and I think
so.
I think we've timed it perfectly. So as I mentioned, free account versus kind of patient, you both have access to real accounts, so you're good there. And the revision, so again, from negative to positive, could change the location or the, you know, whatever, different manager, it could be both women, both men, etc. You know, it's just, yeah. Amazing. Yeah. I could change it from having one employee impacted to a group of employees impacted, etc., collective. So,
and the speed in which it does it too is just so great.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing is, you get energized. Sometimes you get writer's block. Like remember in your dissertations, the days you had writer's block, and you can get writer's block writing cases like this. But with ChatGPT, I get so engaged with it that it re-energizes.
But also
me.
the thing is, right? The reason why this is a great use is because if you think of the impact, it's not going to affect your teaching. It's not going to it's going to make it better because
Yes.
it's efficient. It's helping with the teaching because this is a managerial aspect of teaching that you have to do to prepare these cases or find these cases. If you're having to curate the cases from an existing database of cases, pay for them.
Yeah.
Here, you just try to identify, tools and things that you can use in class that are just going to make your teaching better. So that's wonderful.
I'm curious about the last one when you say they are both women. I'm curious about it because I also have studied gender. When you do that, does it stereotype to some extent?
Does it what?
Does it stereotype
women?
So it's
or any group for that matter.
I haven't picked up on the stereotyping as much, but I have seen some stereotyping in some other situations. So one of them was an example I think I mentioned at the Center for Teaching Excellence symposium this fall. I wanted to do a picture of some accountants. And I had a working hypothesis that if I asked ChatGPT to give me a panel of 9 accountants at work, what was going to happen? What do you think happened?
All men.
7 out of 9 were men.
Yeah.
And 2 women, and 8 out of 9 were Caucasian. Yeah. Now, I then went back and it only gave me 8 instead of 9. So,
but this is also not a critique, maybe not in this context, but maybe there are certain professions percentages are higher for one gender.
Yeah.
So it is being authentic.
Oh, no. So this is where it gets interesting. So I then went back and I go, ChatGPT, are the pictures you give me, are the percentages representative of the population? And it came back and said, sorry, but they aren't. And it said, but they are representative of people's stereotypes, which I thought was fascinating. And so I said, so get the real percentages for me. And so it gave me some suggestions. And it's kind of tricky because it's like, are you talking about the graduating accounting classes coming in? Are you talking about mid-career? Are you talking about senior executives? Because it's going to differ.
Yeah.
Very on level in the organization. So I gave it some parameters, and it eventually acknowledged that about half of accountants today are women. Interestingly enough, one of the largest groups are Asians. And it was like 15% Asian. There were no Asians in that picture they gave me.
The original one.
Yeah. They gave me blacks. Blacks actually have one of the lowest percentages. Asians are first, Hispanics are second, blacks are third, And so it recognized it screwed up after it did, and then rationalized it. The other thing is it did something interesting. I was writing a case last year, and it gave me the names of 2 individuals in the case, and the names came across as kind of like Pat and Chris, where you couldn't quite tell the gender. And what was interesting is that, and I noticed that, and then it talked about them being partners, and I didn't ask about whether they were married or not, So then I asked students in class after the exam. I said, "So the 2 people in the case, Pat and Chris, were they male or female, and were they same sex or opposite sex?" And they said, "Oh, they were both lesbians." Now, did ChatGPT plan that? I have no idea, but it is interesting, and you have to be aware, and be sensitive. Now, the flip of this could happen. I had a case this fall where I was trying to get across the idea of stereotypes. And what was the topic? It was Pygmalion theory and self-fulfilling prophecy. and this issue, no, it was self-efficacy actually, and vicarious experience. Okay. And so I was trying to illustrate how back when I was an undergrad, decades ago, that like in my senior class, or in my freshman class, there was only one person in my class who was a woman who wanted to major in accounting. These days it's 50-50. There was only one woman in my class who was pre-med. These days it's 50-50. And so you got these real different stereotypes. And so I was trying to explain how women today have this advantage that they didn't have 50 years ago of seeing people who are no longer pioneers, but their mothers. And, so I put this picture of a mother and her daughter in a medical lab, and a mother and the daughter at a business office. And then the third picture I used, because I also wanted to illustrate that in sports, we've had these stereotypes that blacks can't play tennis or they can't do well in golf, etc. So I put up a picture of Serena Williams and her daughter.
Yeah.
And wonderfully cute picture. And Serena Williams has definitely blown the stereotype out of the water about whether women can play tennis or black women can play tennis or not. Well, then I get a student in class. I said, well, isn't that picture a stereotype there, that the picture you use of sports, that you use blacks? I'm like, I can't win. So I explained to her, I said, no, it's the exact opposite. I said, the stereotype was, and she was Latino. And I remember this movie in Texas about this high school golf team in South Texas that was discriminated against. And it was like, Latinos can't play golf. You can't even belong to the country club, and stuff like that, And so I was trying to get across that that's another stereotype barrier, or that white guys can't jump. That's another stereotype, phrase that you hear. And I don't know if it satisfied her or not, but this attempt to,
yeah.
So that happens, of that. Okay, so, and I could revise and set it in China, and do another angle there on it there. So any questions to wrap up then?
No, I think we're asking as we went.
I really liked it. What I thought was, I may be using some version of it. I said I'm not using, but not in exams. You talked about it primarily in exams, right? Or do you do it?
So another good point. So I also use these now in class for deliberate practice exercises. And so, because one of the things, in class, we're so lecture heavy. And probably one of the biggest moves I've made in the last, not say half century, I've been teaching, this is my second year of teaching. In about the last 2 decades, I've switched from more being very lecture heavy to being more application oriented. So the use of case studies, didn't use case studies that much before 2000, maybe 1 or 2 out of 30 classes. Didn't do case study exams before 2000. And so one's been doing case studies. Another has been giving people mini scenarios in class where they meet in small groups and have to figure out, okay, how would you apply the theoretical model in this situation for that? And I've been using ChatGPT to write those little mini scenarios to use in class. I also used it this year to do a practice exam where I took some cases from the past and gave them. And then on one of the cases that they had on the practice exam, I did a new version of it and put it on the actual exam. And I wanted to use it as the detector to see if students were doing the practice exam or not. And sure enough, there were out of about 40 students, there were 3 students who absolutely failed, got 0 points on the revised version of it, and they also did very poorly on the exams overall, 40%, 50%, and that's rare in my classes. Students usually get a passing grade on the exam, but just 40%, at a graduate level exam, it's just disgusting in so many ways. And so when I meet with students afterwards, I go, let's talk about the practice exam. Well, I first of all ask, how did you prepare? Yeah. And they'll talk about it. And I go, Now, what about the practice exam? Well, I looked at it. Did you actually work through it though? And I use the analogy, if you don't do the practice exam, you just look at it. It's like looking at a car and saying, well, I looked at the car. That's how I learned how to drive it. Yeah. Uh, and it proves the point, at that point. Now it's too late for them, because I try to emphasize as much as possible, do the practice exam. Uh, and it was just a small question worth, like maybe 7% of the exam. But I'm
Yeah. Well, thank you.
no, we should try to do this again, maybe in the spring, maybe with advertising in the business school or something like that.
I think that'd be great.
Yeah, because I had fun putting it together.
Yeah.
And it was kind of helped me kind of think through, okay, what am I actually doing now?
Yeah.
On this.
And I think this is helpful because it could be for any discipline. It's like how to create a great study for your discipline. You just have to tweak the parameters. But I think that also being aware of the parameters, like the errors that you've been through, is just people don't have to reinvent the wheel in that sense. They don't have to work through those kinks because the prompts are already there for them to kind of help.
Well, no, they're gonna have to work through their own kinks.
True, but some of the stuff some of the things that you've mentioned, particularly on the back of the handout, like the time period, narrative, voice, and tense, And
in different disciplines, it's gonna be different issues.
True. Yeah.
So let's say it's in clinical psychology.
Yeah.
And you want students to be able to recognize, some model of psychosis or something like that. Well, there it's going to be talking about the guardrails might be don't invade patient privacy or something like that. That you've got different guardrails you're going to have to put in that case there. Then, but these are the ones that in an organizational behavior class that I found useful. If you move this, so say to a marketing class, different guardrails. Moved it to a social work class, different guardrails. Education class, different guardrails.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Thing that is not being used, but for others, I mean, how do you see that? Using ChatGPT for building up cases, because it might be used, as you mentioned,
to train the model. Yeah, well, you could also use Microsoft Copilot. So anybody at SMU who has Microsoft Copilot, it does have some of those guardrails that technically,
I didn't know that.
Technically, it's not used to train the model for Microsoft Copilot.
Okay. So
SMU account, you can go to Google Microsoft Copilot. When you go in, you log in with your single sign-on, and you should be able to.
I haven't used Copilot yet.
Yeah.
How do you find it versus ChatGPT?
I use more of the ChatGPT. I don't personally use Copilot as much, but I know that all faculty and staff have access to Copilot.
So they have access, but you're not as familiar with.
Because I already the chats that I've already programmed, they're already programmed in ChatGPT. But if you don't want it to train the system, I think Microsoft Copilot is one option. Mm-hmm. If I use a different LLM, I personally tend to go to Perplexity because I do love Perplexity. Perplexity, when you do a search, it automatically shows like where its source is basically. Mm-hmm. It just shows in there. Copilot, I haven't been using Copilot, but yeah.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. No, it was